I call this webinar Perfect Photo Suite 6 Potpourri because when I think of Potpourri, I think of like a mesh of stuff in a jar. And Perfect Photo Suite 6 is a collection of 7 products, and they actually work really well hand in hand. So what I want to do is I want to show you some examples of images, and this is actually going to be kind of a little bonus because I'm going to do some HDR stuff here as well. We're going to tone map as well. And I'll show you how I would stylize these images using multiple suite products. So let's go ahead here, and I'm just going to jump into Lightroom. I already have the images ready to go. I've got 4 examples here that we're going to work on. And feel free to ask questions. I'll try to go at a good, slow cadence so you all understand. Now, HDR. I love HDR. I don't care who it is that I'm talking to. HDR is, for me, a real boon, and I'll explain why. This is a perfect example of why HDR is good. Now, I took this shot last year in Fort Revere, Massachusetts. So, Fort Revere is in Hull, and I wanted to take a shot of this doorway, this kind of hallway. And what HDR does is it helps you kind of recapture the full tonal range of a scene. So what is tone? In an image, tone happens to be the details that you find in your shadows, your midtones, and your highlights. Now, your camera, your digital camera, depending on the camera that you're using, can only capture X amount, a finite amount of tonal range, meaning that only a certain amount of shadow, midtone, and highlight before you start losing information. So what HDR allows you to do is take several images, we call them brackets, bracketed images, and it allows you to kind of combine them together using various methods. So watch here. In this example here, what I'm doing is I am exposing for the highlights, so the brightest parts of the image, which is really just through here. Now watch as I start exposing for midtones. You're starting to get more of that scene. And then we're getting the shadows. Now watch, as we're exposing for shadows, look what happens to the highlight information. It gets blown out. So you can see here, the image is too small. Are people seeing the image as being small? I just want to make sure that you can see this image here. No. Yeah. Okay. Okay, good. Michelle. What's going on, Michelle? Hopefully I'll see you in DC in a few months. So again, just walking through really quickly. And I can kind of make it a little bit easier for you guys to see this. I'll tab out and we'll lights out the screen. And you can see what we're doing here. We're exposing for different parts of the tonal range across 9 exposures. So let's go ahead here, and I'm going to take all of these exposures and I'm going to send them to Photomatics. So I'm going to go to File, Export. I'll set this Photomatics preset here, and I'll make sure that we're set to, we'll just do JPEG, no big deal here. And let's hit Export. So what's happening is I'm going to send these images. The only thing I'm going to do is reduce chromatic aberration, and I'm going to automatically resend it into back into Lightroom before we go into the suite. All right. And then the output format will be a JPEG because we don't need to waste time. All right, I'm just going ahead here and clearing out the questions module again, just so that I can see the questions. So we're using Photomatics. And let me get rid of this toolbar and fit to screen. So this is actually the first time I've launched Photomatics on this particular computer. Again, this is a brand new computer. I'm just starting to install all of my applications and settings. Now the first thing that I want to do is bring up this histogram here. So we've got this histogram right here, and you bring up the histogram by going to View and then specifying 8-bit histogram. There are a few questions as to what Photomatics is. Photomatics is a product by a company called HDR Soft, and they make a tone mapping product. And you do tone mapping when you want to get HDR images, high dynamic range images. And so what I did was Photomatics took those 9 exposures that I had in Lightroom and kind of combined them here. Now, is Photomatics part of the On1 suite? Richard, actually, it's a really great question. because it could be confusing. No, Richard, Photomatics is a separate product. It's not part of the suite. On1 doesn't make it. So I'll put it right here in the chat module if you guys want to learn more about it. So look at your chat module, and I'm just typing in there. That's the company that makes Photomatics. Okay. So let's go ahead here. Now, what I'm doing is, if you look at the histogram over here, we have blown out highlights. The way a histogram works in Luminance is that you've got your shadows over here, your midtones towards the middle, and your highlights on the right. And if you have any information that's bunching up on either the right or the left, that means you're losing information. Now, what this is telling me right here, this little bunch up, is that over here we have a loss of information. That doesn't mean that the information is not there. The information is actually there. We just need to massage these sliders. So here's how I'm going to work on this. I'm going to start by bringing up the strength really quickly. And I'm not going to spend too much time, but I just want to show you. I want to address the blown highlights, so I'm going to drop the white point down. Now watch, as soon as I do that, boom, we now have no blown highlights. We're starting to get better information here. I'll bring the black point up just a bit, and I'm going to bring the gamma, which is the brightness of the image. And it's kind of like a pulley system. As you're adjusting one slider, you want to adjust some other ones. I'll drop the lighting adjustments, which is the overall tone mapping algorithm, and then I'll bring up some of the detail contrast. That's a bit too much. Okay, so here's our starting image. I'm going to make it a little bit brighter than normal. And you can see we have a good kind of representative tonal scale here. We don't have any blown out highlights or any clipped shadows. This is what your eye would have seen if you were standing here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Save and Re-import. And that's going to bring the image back into Photoshop, and or into Lightroom rather, here. If I compare, say, these two images, let me deselect all of these and take this one and then that one. And let's hit C to compare in Lightroom. I don't think there's an argument here that HDR has a place in photography, because you can see, look, the overall exposure over here is good. It's not psychedelic. It's not overly saturated. It looks pretty realistic compared to the real one. Except over here we have absolutely no information. This is all gone. However, on the right we have all of that information. You can see it. This is representative to what the human eye would see, and so that's why I think HDR has an important place here. But now is the fun part. Let's actually start stylizing the image. I'll make these thumbnails a little larger so you can see them better. All right. So here's our tone mapped image right over there, and I'm going to send it to Perfect Photo Suite by going to File, Plugin Extras. Oh, I have to add the Perfect Photo Suite plugin. Bear with me 1 second. See, it really is a new computer. Under Applications, Perfect Photo Suite 6, Plugin Files, there we go. So that's how, if you don't have the Perfect Photo Suite plugin, that's how you would do it. So now I can send it to the Perfect Photo Suite. While that's happening, I'm going to see if there are any questions. Mark's asking if HDR Soft is a paid sponsor. No, Mark. We did a lot of stuff on. I've done a lot of HDR webinars, and a lot of the questions are, well, why don't you use? I actually see them here. Why aren't you using products by Photoshop, like the HDR Pro and Adobe Photoshop, or HDR Express, which we bundled actually in mid-2011. Why aren't you using those? Bottom line, everyone, I'll tell you straight up, I will show you the products that I use and the products I like to use. Photomax just happens to be one of them. You know, I find it to be one of the better ones out there, and that's just the way it is. We're not sponsored. We don't have anything about it, but yeah. Is it expensive? I think Photomatics is about $100, maybe less. You can find coupon codes for it pretty easily. And in terms of the how I took the shot, because I see Charles is asking, this was with a Canon 15mm fisheye lens using a tripod. I had my Really Right Stuff tripod. So Phil's asking, all right, if you're going to do that, is a tripod necessary? I strongly recommend, yes, use a tripod. All right, and so first thing I want to do here is go to Perfect Effects. So I'm going to go to Perfect Effects by clicking on Effects from the module selector on the top, and now we start stylizing. So my goal here is I want to kind of create a shallow depth of field, but I want to first bring out some of the texture and tone here. For this particular shot, I'm going to go to the movie looks category, and I'm going to scroll over to an effect here called Thermopylae. I like what Thermopylae does to the image. Let's wait for it to apply. Now, that's looking pretty cool right off the bat at full strength, but we don't really want that too much. What we want is to drop this off a bit, and you can see what I'm doing is I'm dropping using the strength slider over here. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to change the overall color tone of the sunlight. And because this is an Urbex image, I'm going to hit Add to commit that effect, and I'm going to go to the Urban Sickness category, or effect rather. And I like Urban Sickness because you see what it does specifically to yellow light? It turns it into this kind of neon green. But here's the thing. First, I'm going to adjust the strength so I get the effect kind of to where I want it. It's a bit too strong for me. Something around here, about 35% is good. Now, I only want the effect to apply to the light over here. So how do we do that? Well, we'll take our masking brush, which is the first tool in the tool well over here in the top left, and we'll bring up the inspector, which is the last icon, the eye. And we're going to hit invert. What invert will do is it'll hide the effect and put the paintbrush into the paint in mode. And with the paint in mode, I'm free now to draw the effect over here. Now you can see if we zoom in a bit, let's zoom in really quickly. There's a little bit of that blue tinge, so I want to actually paint that out. I'm going to change it, paint out here, draw my brush, and just kind of remove that blue tinge because I don't want that there. That's one of the remnants of the effect. All right, now we're getting there. The last thing that I want to do is hit Add, and then go to the effect options and go to tonal contrast, or rather we'll go to tone enhancer. And what I want to do is bring up the tonal contrast. And now you'll use tonal contrast if you have any texture-rich scene. If you see here, let's just look in a little bit. I'm going to zoom in just a tiny bit, and I'm going to pay attention to this the area on the right here of the brick. As I bring up the local contrast, it adds texture to the scene. It really makes it pop. I'm also going to bring a little bit of clarity. And so here, let's zoom out back to the full screen. And let's first turn on and off. I'll show you the before and the after that effect. So before, it's good. You can see it's pretty good, but when we add tonal enhancer, it adds a nice texture boost. Here's the key though. I cannot stress this enough. Do not apply tone enhancer at 100%. That's where you start ruining your image. Drop the strength down significantly. You don't need that much. See, if you notice, none of the effects that I applied were at 100%. Everything gets wrangled back a bit. How am I zooming, Chris? You can do it one of two ways. You can either hit Command or Control plus and minus on your keyboard. Or you can go to, where is it? Zoom in and zoom out under View. Thomas is saying that the HDR soft, the Photomatics coupon is available at Stocking Customs. I'm going to share this with everyone right now. Let me turn off my Dropbox. Pause syncing. All right. So, what about Nik HDR? Paul's asking what about Nik's HDR FX Pro. It's great. It's a great product. The only thing is, for me, it's just not really what I need. Photomatics does a better job for me. I have it. I have the entire Nik suite. I love it. But for me, like I said. All right, just to get back to the matter at hand here. The last thing I want to do is you see right down here, there's this little beer can. I want to bring that out. Just that beer can. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Add. And I'm going to go to Color and Tone. And I'm going to go to Lighten, or Lighter rather. So lighter brightens up the whole image. I just want that can to be brighter. So the first thing I'll do is I'll make the brightness of the overall image even brighter. And just like before, masking brush, inspector. Let's invert it. And now let's just paint in on the can. So you see how we're able to bring just that can into detail? Now the other thing that I want to do is I actually want to create a path. I want to create a light path down here. And I can do that with the same effect. This time I'm going to drop the opacity of my brush. And I'm just going to make a fatter brush, and I'm just going to kind of draw down. Now you see what I'm doing? I'm creating this kind of light path. Not the whole thing, just a little bit of it. And I'm going to draw a few times. And if you want to make it narrow, just hit X to paint out and remove that light effect. I kind of want it to corner over here. Now, to supplement that light effect, what I want to do is I want to darken the edges. So guess what? We're going to hit Add. Let's go to Darken, or Darker. Let's drop the brightness down to make it really dark. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our brush, invert the mask, and then with the brush opacity also at about 45%, I'm just going to start drawing a path right here. So you see what I'm doing? I'm kind of layering the darkness. So what it's doing is it's giving the eye a visual cue to go through the frame. Start down here, go through here. And when we're done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Apply, and I'm going to let it render the effects. Once it's done, so here we're in Photo Tools, and you can see here's our original. Here's where we did, not in Photo Tools, in Perfect Effects. I'm going to go to Focal Point. And Focal Point is part of Blur, so you'll hit Blur from the module selector. Let's close that and make this full screen. Is the masking brush edge aware? Joe, that's a great question. No, the masking brush is not edge aware. You have to be careful with that. So let's take a look at Focal Point. What are we going to do here? Well, by default, the bug in Focal Point is round. You can see it's right over here. It's circular. What I want to do is I want to make it planar. And so I'm going to do that by changing the shape on the top right here from round to planar. Now, by doing that, I can take the bug, and I'm going to make the bug more horizontal and put the bug kind of in the foreground here. All right, so you can see where we're going. Now, what was that lesson that I said earlier about tonal contrast? How you don't need a lot of it? The same thing applies to focal point. If there's one lesson, if there's one thing that I want to share with you today, it's less is more with focal point. I promise you that. You do not need all of this. And actually, this one is actually a special request for my friend Michelle, who's on the webinar, because Michelle, she challenged me to see if I can use, I think it was 6 focus bugs. And if I could use 6 focus bugs, she'd buy me a shot of tequila at Photoshop World. Now, we couldn't, me and Dan, our senior product manager, we couldn't think of a way to use 6. But in this image here, which is why I have this image, I actually figured out how to use 4. So I'm going to show you how we are going to use 4 different focus bugs to kind of, and it actually will make sense. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the amount of blur, which is right over here, the amount. I'm going to drop that down pretty drastically because you do not need that much. All I'm looking at right now is I want to see what this area looks like out of focus. It does me no good. If we were here, you have no idea what's over here. It just looks like a splotch. So let's drop that blur down significantly, like to 7 or 8. That's good. So that's looking good. The only problem is that it's not a real plane of focus. What I need is I need this right wall, I need the ceiling, and I need this left wall to be in focus as well. So I don't know if you know this, but you can actually you can have multiple focus bugs. We've got our one right here. I'm going to hit the plus sign under the focus bug panel to create another focus bug. And I'm going to do the same thing. Change the shape from round to planar, put it over here. Now notice when I create a new one, it has the same amount. So we're getting this nice fall off. And now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat the process. Third focus bug, planar. Let's put that on the left. And then one more for the top. Plus, planar. and then make it horizontal and just bring it way up there. So now what you're starting to see, if you can kind of, let's kind of show the mask. You see what we did here? We created this really nice custom plane of focus. We can drop the brightness of that area and boost the contrast as well. Or we can make it brighter. That's actually kind of cool. Like there's some sort of explosion coming out. Let's boost the contrast. And then let's drop the vignette down. We'll create a vignette to draw the eye. So you can see here the original and what we were able to do. Now, I want to actually bring this can in focus. So I selected my masking brush from the bottom here. I'm going to make sure that under my focus brush palette, I'm set to paint focus and that my opacity is at 100%. And I'm just going to paint right there. Bring that can at, and then these little cans in focus as well. Actually, you know what? Undo. Oops. That's what I wanted to do. Edit. Oh, I don't have a redo. Oh, well. I don't want to do it. I'll do it over really quickly. Planer. I don't know why that, I think you know what I did? I hit the command for reset all by accident when I wanted to reset just the mask. So just to step this through really quickly, let me reset the mask now. We drop this down to about 8. Add focal point, or focus bug 2. Round, or planar, over here. Planar, over here. And then third one on the top. Okay, so I've quickly kind of recreated the scene. Now we also kind of increase the brightness there and increase the contrast. And what I wanted to do is bring focus to the cans, except I made a mistake. I didn't want the opacity of the brush to be 100. I actually wanted that to be pretty low, like about 40%, just to give some idea of what there is. And then here I'll just do a kind of an even lower opacity because it's further back into the plane of focus, just kind of like that. There, that's looking better. And I'll bring up the highlight blue. There we go. Oh, and I added that vignette. So let's hit apply, and then I'll take questions for this image. But I want to show you how we were able to use multiple products in the suite together. So to see, here's that's our original image right there. Let me close the inspector. Here's our original image, our HDR, our tone mapped image. We then stylized it using perfect effects, and then we created a custom depth of field, a shallow depth of field, so that your eye kind of starts here and goes upward. Now if we hit save, it'll actually save the updated file, and if I close, there's my image right there. So from this to that. All right, image 2. I've worked on this before, but I think this works really well. Let me see if there are any wow, lots of questions. Will On1 play nice with Nik HDR Effects Pro? Bruce asks. Absolutely. Our products work. They're very complementary in nature, our products and Nik's products. I think it's kind of cute in a way. People get kind of tiptoe around, oh, well, you know, when we're at trade shows, you know, a user will come to me and say, well, you know, I also use Nik. I'm like, I use Nik too. I love Silver Effects Pro. I think it's fantastic. It's okay. Here's the thing, everyone. It's about using the right tool for the right job. And the right tool for me may not be the right tool for you, and vice versa. So don't let anyone tell you this is the best or that's the best. I'm just sharing to you how I do stuff. And maybe that'll help you kind of gleam over what you can do better. But yeah, they work perfectly. At what point do I apply sharpening, Charles is asking. It depends. Usually sharpening for me is applied on output. So if I go back to this image and I take, and for the record, we're already halfway through the hour. I'm not the kind of person usually who will end, like this isn't a therapy session and your hour's up. If you guys want to stay later, we'll go later. So don't worry about it. I'd rather give you the details and save some. Maybe we'll work on 2 images, but get you more information, and then we'll do this again next month. So don't worry about it. And I'll try to go through all of the questions that I see here. But so Charles's question, well, sharpening. So for me, let's say I'm ready to send this out to the internet for my blog. What I would do is I'd go to File, Export, and I'd go to, or I'd create a preset here. So I'm going to export this to hard drive as a JPEG. So here's a JPEG, and under sharpening, I'd sharpen for screen. So screen is for screen, for web, and I'll usually do standard. And so this is done at the very end. That's if I'm sharing on my blog, which is what 99% of my images are outputted for. If I was sharpening for print, that's a totally different story. If that was the case, what I would do is I would actually send this to perfect resize. So I'd go back to File, Plugin Extras, Perfect Photo Suite. It opens up the PSD. There are layers, and I'd go to perfect resize. Because I like perfect resize sharpening a hell of a lot better than any other one for print, specifically for print. So here, under sharpening, there's our sharpening right over here. I could turn that on. And typically, everyone, when you're sharpening, you want to click on this 1-to-1 under the navigator up here on the top right. Click 1-to-1. This will give you a pixel view. So here I'd go and I'd probably use something like the progressive, and I'd use it in a small amount. I like the progressive for these types of shots. And then here, like, I'd bring the amount up just a bit. It's already pretty sharp to begin with, but I would do this. So Charles, I hope that answers your question. Do I have a denoise program that I prefer, Timothy? I like Nick's noise reduction a lot, and I also like, really my favorite one was Imagenomics, had a Noiseware Pro, but these guys are off their rocker. It's been, almost 2 years now since Adobe released CS5, which is 64-bit, and in order for me to use, the only way I would use Noiseware Pro is if they released a 64-bit Mac client. They have a 64-bit PC client, but they're off their rocker. They have not done it, so I use the other problem. Yeah, Topaz is not bad too, Larry. Mary Ellen asks a great question. Do I have an opportunity to show you that here? Mary Ellen's question is, when do you use the standalone capabilities of the suite, and when do you use Photoshop and Lightroom? To be honest, everyone, I use my workflow, and I did a workflow webinar a couple weeks ago, and I'm doing another one this week, a follow-up. My workflow, personally, I have all of my images in Lightroom, and then I send them to Photoshop, and that's where I access the suite. I do not personally send them to the suite myself. So it's kind of thing like, I cannot tell a lie. I send them to Photoshop, and from Photoshop, and the reason for that is because I like using selections and smart objects in Photoshop a lot. Lucian's asking, how much memory should you have with the suite? We recommend 8 gigabytes of RAM at the minimum. I've got 16 gigs on this iMac right there, and it's a 3.4 gigahertz i7. This is the highest end iMac I could buy from Apple. And then I have 16 gigs at home as well. So I don't use perfect layers? No. Sometimes I will, Sandra, but for the most part, no. I use the suite independently, each product. So let's go ahead and use this image. I want to show you this image here. Now, even though I said I don't use it in my workflow, I want to show it because I think a majority of our users here prefer to just use Lightroom and the suite. So by sending all 4 of these images to the Perfect Photo Suite, we're taking 4 unique files and we're applying them into one document on their own layer. So I actually took this shot last year, right after Photoshop World Orlando. We went to Universal. And I want to show you, I'm going to use, I think, 3 or 4 different products here. The first thing I want to do is I want to create this motor drive sequence of the roller coaster. I want all 4 cars to be on the same image. And so this is pretty easy. All I'm going to do is I'm going to use a masking brush, and I'm going to paint out the areas that I want to reveal. So here I'm painting this area out. Repeat the process on layer 3, which are these cars. I'm going to kind of go to about here with that one, and then here. And actually here I'm going to clean that up right there because the two cars intersected, and I don't want that to happen. And then one more time here. Get that masking brush, and then repeat the X. There we go. So get that. And you see how, because we're doing the masks from the bottom up, it's really easy to kind of get everything. So here, boom, we've got our motor drive sequence. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to use Perfect Mask to add a sky. So what I'm going to do first is, I don't know how many of you know this. How many of you are familiar? Actually, I don't know, because I'm going to get 1,000 people saying yes or no. There's a command in Photoshop. It's the keyboard shortcut is commonly referred to as the claw, and that is it's called kind of stamp visible. Basically, what you're doing is you're creating a new layer by merging all of the visible layers without actually merging them. It's kind of like a snapshot. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Perfect Photo Suite has this functionality. If you go to Layer and then New Layer from Composite, what it does is it creates a 5th layer. So now I can hide all of these layers here. Doesn't matter. I don't have to merge them, and I've got my working layer. So it's kind of a non-destructive workflow. With that done, the first thing I want to do is get rid of that spot using my retouch brush because it's driving me nuts. And there's one right here too. I want to replace the sky. So we actually bundle a bunch of skies with the Perfect Photo Suite. If you go to File and then Browse Backgrounds, you've got these files here of textures and backgrounds and skies. So I'm going to go to the sky here, and I'm going to find one that I think will work pretty well. Let's see. Just nothing special, just something that, maybe something like this one. We'll hit Add to add it to its own layer, and then put it under. So now we've got the sky under the roller coaster. Let's hit Mask, and let's use Perfect Mask. What's happening now is Perfect Mask is kind of grouping the colors together. And what I like to do is, let me go to the Advanced tab. I like to use the keep and drop droppers first. So what I'm doing is I'm selecting colors to protect using the dropper with the plus sign. These are colors that I never want to be masked out. So you see what I'm doing? I'm just kind of going through here. And then with the drop dropper, I want these various shades of blue. All right. Now with that done, the first thing I'll do is take my drop brush, drop the brush size, and then just kind of draw through the sky. Kind of get through those areas there. And you see what I'm doing? I'm just kind of drawing through, and it's kind of snapping the mask. And then for the areas that are too small, just adjust your brush size. So I'm getting these really tiny strokes to fill in these crevices. There, 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 and there. Now the last thing I need to do is actually adjust these for the areas through the track. And so for that I'm going to use the magic brush and just paint right through. Because you see how it's doing a nice job? It's not removing the track. I'm going to go right through there. Right through here, there. You want to make sure that you get all those spots so that it's realistic. I think we're good. Let me get right through there. Oh, right there. There we go. And right through there. I got that already. So we got a pretty good mask, I think, so far. You know, compared to that. And all I did was hit the tilde key. The tilde key is the top left key right below the escape key. And then I'm going to hit 5 to show the composite. Oh, I think right here I need to get. Oh, I got that. So I'll hit apply, and that's going to bring my image back to layers with that mask. So that's a pretty complex mask. So what can we do now? Well, the first thing I can do is I can add a color fill layer in between So let's say I want to make the sky a little bit darker and a little bit more blue. Well, I can go to Fill and add a cooling layer. So I can adjust how cool only that sky is. Then add one more for darken. And just darken that up a bit. And with that done, again, I'm going to create one more color fill layer, or one more layer from composite. So layer, new layer from composite. Again, what it does is it creates a snapshot right there. Turn these off. And I'm going to go to focal point. I'll show you why. Let's reset it. You can still see my 4 focus bugs. What I want to do is I want to create a cinematic look here, like a movie poster. So I'm going to take my focus bug, change it to planar, and I'm going to put it kind of across that front car. So I'm going to make it kind of at an angle down here. Make it a little narrower. And now what I'm going to do is, again, drop that amount down significantly. You don't need that much. Starting to see now how it's trailing out of focus, in focus, trailing out of focus. I'm also going to drop the brightness of that background and blur and increase the contrast. And then I'm also going to add a slight vignette. Now, if you want to add some blur over here to this track so that it doesn't look like it's in focus, just take your focus brush, set it to paint blur, and again, whenever you're painting blur, you shouldn't really be any more than 10% opacity on the brush. You want to be very subtle about that. And so I'm just going to paint in a little bit of blur right there so that matches up. So you see now that's kind of out of focus. It gives you a nice three-dimensional quality. I'll hit apply. And now finally, the last thing that I want to do is go to photo frame. Launch that. And then I'm going to go to under the photographic instant film, we'll go to something like this and hit apply frame. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring the frame back into perfect layers. Oh, I have to put the frame above the actual, there we go. That's why. So here you can see what happened was, let's zoom out a bit. The frame didn't sit well, so I can take my move tool and I'm just going to stretch this out a bit so that it's kind of hugging the edge. Hit apply and then back to normal. There we go. Actually, you know what? I'm going to just get rid of this whole thing altogether. What I like is the emulsion through the window of the frame. And then to get rid of the bars, just go back to your pan tool. So you can see what we did here. If you want to get rid of some of this, just take your masking brush. I'd bring up the opacity and drop down the opacity of the masking brush and just kind of mask it out so that you don't have a distraction around the front car. So I think that's pretty cool, what we were able to do with 4 separate images. And you can see just how many layers we have over here. All right, let's see if there are any questions. Whoa, lots of questions. Is the transform function of the move tool destructive? Is the transform function of the move tool destructive? No, you can, Gerald, you can undo all the way back. Which module holds the skies? So Mike, under perfect, actually, so this is a benefit to using the suite itself and not going to Photoshop. If you're in the suite and you go to File, Browse Backgrounds, here are, so you can see we've got gradients, we've got indoor images. So if you want to mask someone into an indoor scene, you can do that. We've got outdoor scenes. So if you want to mask them outdoors, and like I said, skies, studio backdrops are really popular. So if we actually scan these are actual studio backdrops that we have here in the office. So you can apply a studio backdrop if you'd like. Can you open the backgrounds in CS5? No, Robert, because it's part of the actual Perfect Layers product. Do I have to use the? So Andrew's asking, all right, well, do we have to use the skies here, or can I use my own sky? You can use your own sky. So the way I would do it is, let's say I wanted to merge. So here's my sky right there. If I wanted to use my own sky, I'd actually go to File, Add Layers from File, and I'd browse to a sky file, and it would come in as its own layer. So Jay's asking, all right, and I think a few people ask, can you add your own images? I see Jay's asking, James is asking. Right? Okay, the short answer is no. The long answer is no, but that feature is coming. Right now, it requires too many steps that you would run the risk of corrupting your database. And so we're actually going to be building functionality into the suite that will allow you to import your stuff. But for now, the best way to do it is just to go to File, Add Layers from File, and find the image, the layer or the texture that you want to use. I'm just looking through some of the questions here. Which program do you use to print this image? Oh, I would use Perfect Resize to get the image ready for print done, but I would then send it to a lab. I don't do printing at home. I'm way too lazy. Is Perfect Layers available only to Lightroom? No, Mike. Perfect Layers is accessible by itself. It's also functional in Lightroom and Apple Aperture. All right, let's work on one more image. Let's actually save that. That's kind of cool. I like the way that came out. Okay, so there's our image. See the 4 images and our 5th one, non-destructive. So it's kind of cool. Image 3. All right. So wait a second. That's not the right image. Well, I guess, okay, I can tone map it, but I had a long exposure that I wanted to include. Unless this is cropped. No. Okay. Slight change of plans, that's fine. What's this image here? Let's do this image. This will be a better image, because I want to, the other one I'll save for another session. Well, yeah, Richard is saying the products work in Photoshop. Absolutely. What the question was, can I use Perfect Layers? And the answer is no, you can't use Perfect Layers in Photoshop. Because Photoshop is, if you're using Photoshop, that's your layered workflow solution, not Perfect Layers. And so to get access the suite in Photoshop, you'd go to Window, Extensions. Oh, my plugin's not here. Then is it under here? Huh. For some reason, Photoshop didn't pick up. Oh, I know why. I'll have to do that for the next webinar. But in order to access the On1 plugins, you can go to Window, Extensions, and then select. There'll be an On1 entry here, and that will give you your On1 palette. So let's do this. Let's actually go through and tone map this image. Carla, yeah, this webinar is being recorded for sure. All right, I'm going to take these images, and again, just like before, File, Export with Preset, Photomatics Pro. Or actually, let me do Export. Go to Photomatics Pro. Let's do JPEG. And there we go. JPEG, and then here. I'm just going to rename the file really quickly. All right. So there's our tone mapped image. And you can see right off the bat this is beautiful because you have a nice even exposure across the board. Let me close the presets bar. I can't stand it. You can turn that off in preferences. But the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to drop that gamma down because it's too bright for me. The gamma is the brightness. And so I took this shot. This is in Alki Beach in Seattle. We were here for a Google Plus photo walk in December. And so I'm going to go ahead and basically what I'm doing is I'm just adjusting these settings here to get the just a good baseline image. That's looking pretty good. I might bring the black point up a bit. There we go. So you can see no clipped shadows, no blown out highlights, and we have pretty much all of our information here towards the left side of the mid-tone range. I'll hit save and re-import just to compare. So I would compare this image and say this image here. Oops, deselect. This or this and that and compare them so we can see the difference. So you see how you have so much more detail? And I'm going to crop out that light there. Don't worry about that. But you have so much more detail. And I actually like what Photomatics did for merging the moving water. It actually looks pretty aggressive over here. The only thing I would do is probably mask in some of the original water over here. So let's do that. All right, so I'm going to take, which images were they? These two, 4 and 5. Let's send them both to the Perfect Photo Suite. And I'll show you what I mean by masking them in together. Let me hide these two layers. All right, what I want to do is I want to have a little bit of the detail here apply here. So I might, let me see if it'll work well. Take the masking brush, drop the opacity down and start masking in. No, you know what? Forget it. I don't want to play with that. So let me reset the mask and delete that layer. It's going to go away anyway in stylization. So let's go to Perfect Effects. And I'm going for more of a kind of Gotham look here, kind of like a Batman type of look. There's, under Movie Looks, there's Arkham, the first effect under Movie Looks, and it does just a wonderful job, not at this strength, but just drop it down. And you just bring a little bit of it up and it adds a really nice kind of brown tinge to it, to the shot. I'll hit add to commit that. And so you see what we're doing, we're kind of building on top of the effects. The next thing I'll add is Frumpy. Now, why am I adding Frumpy? I don't like this look, but if I bring the blending options up of Perfect Effects, I can actually, instead of just applying the effect as a normal blend, I can go to something like Multiply or Soft Light, which is what I'm going to keep. Oops, not Multiply, Soft Light. So you see what it does? It has a really nice kind of contrast boost. I'm going to back off of it a bit. Hit Apply. And so if I toggle the before and the after, so to toggle before and after in Perfect Effects, you'll hit Command P or Control P. So there's our before, there's our after. I'm going to hit Apply. Next thing I'm going to do is crop. So I'm going to just take the crop tool in Perfect Layers. I'm going to crop this down. There's too much unnecessary sky, so I'm going to drop this and just draw my selection kind of like right around there and hit Apply. Okay. Now, there's a lot of noise in the sky. I don't know if this is coming through, but I'll show you a cool little tip of how I would do noise reduction using just Lightroom and Perfect Layers. I'm going to hit Save to return this image back to Lightroom. So it's basically saving the image, going to close, and then there it is right there. Okay? And what I want to do is I want to add noise reduction just to the sky. The problem is that Lightroom has this global noise reduction in Lightroom 3. It's a different case in Lightroom 4, but watch this. I'm just going to bring my panels up. And this was taken with a Canon 15mm fisheye lens. All right, the first thing I'll do is I'm going to go to grid, and I'm going to take this image. I'm going to go to photo, create virtual copy. So now I have two versions. You know, one here, one there. I'm going to take the version here. I'm going to go to the develop module, and I'm going to go to the detail palette. And I'm going to zoom in. And basically with my image zoomed in, I'm going to bring the noise reduction. So you can see what it's doing is it's applying noise reduction to the whole image. I'm going to add a little bit of luminance and color noise reduction. But it does a nice job of smoothing out that sky. But see how the whole image here is smoothed out? Well, watch. Because I took a duplicate, I could take both images, send them right back to the suite. And to me, this is awesome because if you have Lightroom, you have a noise reduction product. You don't have to buy any other ones. So here, I'm going to rename this one to noise reduction because that's my noise reduction layer. And then if I hide it, this is my original. And so all I need to do is bring this on top and then use a layer mask. Or a layer bug, rather. Not a layer bug, a masking bug. Click in here, and what I'm doing is I'm essentially just revealing the noise reduction in the sky. Because I can go to masking, invert mask, and now only the noise reduction is applying to the sky. Oh wait, this is what I wanted. So that's how you're able to kind of get the best of both worlds.